Welcome into Training Camp Report presented by Advent Health. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. Another great day out here at camp, especially because we have Special Olympics athletes joining us.
Oh, that's the best.
One of my favorite days every year because
Yes.
after practice they'll do some drills with our guys, so make sure you stay tuned for all the coverage of that, which is going to be phenomenal, just like it is every year. So before we get into things we're kind of looking for at training camp today, let's get into just some news and little nuggets that we've learned. I know there were actually a couple roster additions, which is not uncommon this time of year.
Exactly. Week into camp, had a lot of hot practices, a lot of intense practices. People get minor injuries. That's accumulated a little bit in the skill positions. You had Trey Palmer sitting out, Cam Johnson sitting out among the receivers, DJ Williams and Josh Williams both sitting out. So the Bucs went out and got some young new players at those positions. For the receiver spot, they got Jaden Smith out of Nevada. He went to like 3 different schools, but he finished at Nevada, and he was in our rookie tryout camp, so they already have a good feel for him. He's an undrafted rookie right now. And then at the running back position, signed Owen Wright, who has spent the last couple of years with the Baltimore Ravens. 1 year he was on the practice squad, got to play in 1 game, and last year he was on injured reserve the whole year. So that's just a couple new additions. They cut DJ Williams, the second-year running back who's had been dealing with injuries, and a guy named Marcus Banks. We got 2 Banks.
Yeah.
Or we did. Marcus Banks, the safety, was also waived, so to make room for those guys.
And then I know Cade Otton and Levante David have also sat out a little bit. What do we know about the situation with them?
Cade's one of a few guys like Trey Palmer, too, who are just dealing with some hamstring issues. That nothing serious, but you take caution at this point, but he's been out for a little while. And then Levante David has a less specified leg injury. I think Coach Bowles tends to refer to that sort of thing as soreness. And it's just basically with Levante, they're not going to take it. They're going to just be cautious. They're not going to take any, they're not going to push that at all at this point in training camp. If there's any single person out here who could afford to miss some practices,
who knows what they're doing.
It's Levante David.
Yeah, that's very true.
Wouldn't worry about either of those guys, but they aren't practicing at the moment.
You know, as we've looked at training camp every year, it's always our main thing we do is the whole position battles, either for starting roles, backup roles, roster spots. And I just really think the slot corner one is so fascinating this year, and it's
really
definitely
is.
one of the ones that is the most cut and dry of a competition. You know, that we thankfully, because we have a great roster, we brought a lot of people back. There aren't as many spots, I feel like, as some other years of, well, we really don't know who might snag this. And it turns out, after talking to Todd Bowles recently, that there are about infinity options at this spot. I'm surprised our names weren't on this list.
Yeah, it was. We always joke. It's become a joke between us about cornerback depth and how much I value that. But specifically at the slot job, the Bucs have so many options. Think about this. In 2022, Antoine Winfield was the week 1 slot corner. In 2023, it was Christian Izien. And in 2024, it was Tyke Smith. All 3 of those guys are still on the team, but none of them is probably going to be your starter in the slot this year. But you're starting with a baseline of 3 guys who have already proven they can do it and do it well. Now you have those 3 guys have taken some snaps there, but Jacob Parrish, the rookie, the 3rd-round draft pick, he's seen a lot of time there. Kendall Vildor has, as I said, Tyke Smith and Antoine Winfield. A rookie safety who's been really turning a lot of heads, J.J. Roberts, has actually taken some snaps in the slot, and the Bucs have really liked what he's done. But I think maybe the most interesting one to me is Zion McCollum.
Yeah, that shocked me, honestly.
I mean, he did do it a little bit as a rookie, but last year he basically took every snap as the outside left corner.
Yeah, even on the same side, like that was his
and
spot.
he looks like an outside corner. He's big.
Yep.
He's really
long,
a big corner, length, speed. But the idea is the way offenses around the league get creative, and sometimes they take their biggest or best receiver and put him in the slot. Zion himself mentioned the Falcons and Drake London doing that it would be nice if you wanted to let your biggest corner and maybe your top corner travel with him, and that includes going into the slot. So I think what they're doing is preparing for some options, given a certain game plan where they might want to let Zion go cover the big guy in the slot. So it's just being ready for different options. And what that also does is, we do have a bit of a logjam in outside corner too. So if there's some times when Zion is playing in the slot, that opens up opportunities for somebody like Benjamin Morrison or Jacob Parrish. So it's just finding different ways to use all of this kind of newfound cornerback depth.
Yeah.
And I find it kind of interesting.
Yeah, I do think that's going to be really interesting. And, another spot that we haven't talked maybe as much about is the inside linebacker spot where, again, we know Levante David has that shored up. But, man, I'm excited to see what Servassier Dennis could look like this year. Dealt with injuries coming into the seasons. We haven't really gotten to see, him at his full, understanding the system, being healthy. And it feels like we haven't seen as much of him in some ways in training camp that it feels like, he's not making as many splash plays, but it feels like it's because no one's throwing towards him.
He built up a lot of buzz, maybe more than any other player on the team during the offseason and the mini camps and all that, just because he was healthy, for one thing. And the coaches really were impressed with his coverage ability, and he was making a lot of splash plays, including interceptions. And then you get here to training camp and you realize a week into it, you're like, haven't heard Servassier Dennis's name, haven't seen him running picks back, and we've had a decent number of picks in this camp. Well, that's because he's done so good in his coverage drops that he's taking away the middle of the field a lot of the time, and the quarterbacks have just decided not to throw to the middle of the field because he's been exactly where he's supposed to be. So he's just not getting opportunities for big plays. But if you recall, this was a major issue for the Bucs defense. If there was one deficiency last year, it was the coverage in the middle between the linebackers and the safeties. We just didn't have we gave up some pretty bad numbers in the middle of the field in terms of coverage. And so if you have improved that significantly, then that's a big deal.
Yeah, and speaking of coverage, Jamel Dean made some headlines for something he said as compared to even what he just did on the field. And I thought this was such an interesting quote. He said that he thinks this team is better than the one that won the Super Bowl in 2020.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, if the fact that whether you think that's true or not.
Well, it hasn't been proven.
Clearly, we won't know till the end of the season. But for that to even be a conversation, something that he would think to say, that's got to make you excited.
I don't feel like Jamel's generally been a very boastful guy, right?
Yeah, that's not his thing.
He's kind of straightforward most of the time.
What's his thing he says? Don't make a scene. Jamel Dean.
Exactly.
He made a scene.
Don't make a scene. It's just
He
Dean.
made a scene yesterday.
He did say, I think this team is better than the one that won the Super Bowl, which he was on, obviously. And he brought it down to the camaraderie of the team and how well they are communicating together. And I think he's one of these guys that really likes the fact that the secondary is all meeting together instead of cornerbacks separate from safeties. And he says just the way they're all playing together and they all know what each other's going to do really kind of strikes him as the difference there between why he thinks this could be, he didn't say it, but I'll say it, could potentially be a better team than 2020. And I'm not comfortable saying that because that team won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, but it's encouraging, I guess, that one of the players that's seen both thinks that this team is that good.
That's great. I love it. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to have NFL Network's Tom Pelissero join us. So we'll be right back after this break.
If we told the world 50 years ago that this is what Tampa Bay would become, they wouldn't have believed us. Imagine that. An unproven team in an unproven city, they couldn't see what we saw. The underdog in the unknown. But ever since the goalpost came down in '77, this town's been hooked. Fixated on the work and focused on that prize. Times change, and boy, so is this place. Even as the creamsicle and white turned to pewter and red, the wild spirit of our crew remains. Take a look at the last 5 decades, where the incredible has accomplished the impossible. Our greatest memories have the Bucs at the heart. We danced in the rain, man. We took the Lombardi for a ride, and year after year, the biggest party in Tampa happens right here. Because this team, these moments, they share one thing in common. They're made by Tampa Bay.
Welcome back into Training Camp Report presented by Advent Health. Casey Phillips here with NFL Network's Tom Pelissero. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, Casey. It's you got a great setup here. It's protecting us from the sun. There's
We
a little
have
breeze.
learned.
Can I stay?
Yes,
Can I just
absolutely.
be here for the next 2 hours? That would
Yes.
be awesome.
We'll get you a nice fan. We were just discussing that you drew the heat short straw of all the Southern teams that you're touring here. And so we appreciate you sweating it out here with us. And you actually had a little bit of news you broke this morning about Baker Mayfield today, if you want to share that with the fans watching.
So Baker Mayfield hit his hand yesterday. sounds like it was on his shoulder pad early in practice. He finished the practice. It's Baker Mayfield, it's your quarterback, so as a precaution, they put him through all the various scans, checked him out. Everything came back pretty clean. So hand sore, just like you would imagine. You
Yep.
hit your hand on something, it's not going to feel great the next day. My understanding is he's day-to-day, not a long-term injury, but just probably a good idea to hold him back. He's on the practice field. He's hanging out. He's
Yeah,
just
you
not in
can't keep
uniform
that
today.
man off the practice field. That's
right.
for sure. He's going to be out there. Well, I know, in the break, you and I were kind of talking about some of the things you're excited to watch out here. And, of course, someone Baker's excited to have is Emeka Egbuka. And I think he's been such an interesting story coming in when, of course, not where people thought the Bucs were going to go with that first-round pick, but he's a guy that forced them to, is almost how it sounds with who he is. What have you learned talking to different guys and watching him to see what you feel like his potential could be?
Well, it's interesting thinking back to pre-draft and all the conversations I had with different teams. And I don't want to say that Emeka Egbuka was polarizing, but he was not necessarily the style of receiver that every team wanted. But in terms of just a pure wide receiver, not height, weight, speed, but just like a dude who plays the position, Emeka Egbuka was somebody that a lot of people within the league were really big fans of. I actually wrote my annual potential first-round surprise story, in part because none of our NFL.com mock drafters had Egbuka in the first round. I was like, not only is he going to go in the first, I think he could go top 20. So I was not surprised that he went as high as he did. The Bucs taking him was a little bit of a surprise, but I think that speaks to Jason Light, who's been one of the best drafting GMs during his tenure here over the last, what's it been, dozen years. They're always going to take the players that are going to fit in the big picture. It's not strictly a need. It's not strictly, hey, we need this, we got to take that position. It's not directly connected to Chris Godwin and his injury, though certainly having Emeka Egbuka allows you to be patient with Chris Godwin early in the season. I've had several conversations just in my travels. This is the 8th camp I've been to over the last week, and just talking about different divisions, different teams. And when the Bucs come up, one thing that I hear consistently is there's not many teams with a receiving group like this one. When you go all the way down the list from Mike Evans, who from everything I've heard has looked great out here in camp, Godwin, Egbuka, and don't forget Jalen McMillan, who was really impressive a year ago. Like, that's 4 deep at a position where you need all the receivers that you can get. As the Bucs know well, over the past couple of years, injuries happen, you need different guys, and when they're all healthy, that allows you to create some mismatches that are going to be tough for opponents.
Yeah, and outside of the wide receiver spot, what are you looking at offensively overall? You got the new offensive coordinator coming in who's not technically new since he was already here before, knowing you've returned all your starters from last year, seeing the numbers that they put up. What is your ceiling, you think, for this offense and what they could look like now that really all they've done, they haven't lost, they've just gained, and then now having Josh Grizzard come in here, what do you feel like you're going to be watching to see, can this offense even take it to another level this year?
Josh Grizzard's been on my annual Rising Young Coaches list for several years now as a guy to watch in the future. Obviously, when you're a position coach, you're hoping that you get that opportunity to call the offense. Not surprised, Josh is a young guy, but there's a lot of young OCs right now. This gives them some level of continuity, having somebody that's from within the building, but they've kind of gotten used to it. This is their normal. They've had to replace the offensive coordinator the past few years. I would fully anticipate that they're going to build off what was already the existing offense here, but like any new OC, there's going to be different twists on it. There's going to be different rhythms in terms of the play calling, and that's all the things that they're going to be kind of building through here, as they had the past couple of years. You go back to the year that Dave Canales was the OC here. The first half of the year, the offense scuffled at times. They really struggled to run the football, but they got better as the season went on. Same thing last year with Liam Cohen here. So, again, this is a really, really talented roster. They've got veterans, they've got young dudes, they've got a quarterback in Baker Mayfield who, again, I fully anticipate will be back out here in the not-too-distant future. There's a lot of reasons to believe in a Buccaneers team that for a number of years running now has found a way one way or another to be at the top of the NFC South.
And so then now on the defensive side of things, we saw after Egbuka, then they did defense after that. What do you feel like you're looking at of these rookies and the impact they could make and maybe some of the areas that needed to be addressed for this defense to be at the level that this team knows it needs to be for their goals they have of where now winning the NFC South is not the goal anymore. It's a step along the way. Their aspirations are higher. What did you see that they did to address this defense that makes it ready to be at that level?
Well, you think back to, and I just rewatched this game, it re-aired on NFL Network. Bucs were up fourth quarter in that game against a Commanders team that ended up going to the NFC Championship. Then obviously there's a fumble and there's an inability to get a defensive stop. There's some luck that plays into this thing. But if you're looking for, what's the upside of the Buccaneers, there's no question they can have a dynamic offense. It's can the defense get that much better. And so what do? Obviously, they took Ibuka in the first, but they drafted a couple of corners who I fully anticipate are going to play a lot this season. You know, they got younger in that secondary. They've still got some of the veterans, guys like Levante David, who is, 35 years old now, but from everything I've been told has looked awesome out here in camp. There's some guys who just can do it. You know, there's a lot of guys who 30, 31, 32, they fall off a cliff. And then you got those rare dudes who just, you know, into their mid-30s and potentially beyond can keep playing. And I think one of the cool things about how the Bucs have been built, and you see this with a team like the Eagles that did this for a number of times, the number of Pro Bowl caliber one-helmet players, the guys that they keep long-term. Obviously, Mike Evans has spent his entire career here, over 12 years with the Buccaneers. He's in the last year of his contract, but I would anticipate that if he's still playing well and wants to keep playing, the Bucs will want him back. Kind of like, you know, how the Cardinals at the end of Larry Fitzgerald's career just kept bringing him back on a series of one-year deals. Levante has been on that one-year type of thing. But that's part of building culture. There's guys are going to come and go. Coaches are going to come and go, as we've seen here. But when you have those guys who can be the examples in the building, not just as players but as people, dudes in the locker room, and you keep those guys and you keep bringing them back. You know, was Levante David a better player at 27 than he is in his mid-30s? You'd say logically, probably, but he's still playing well, and it's part of, hey, you can be that guy. You can be Levante David. You can be Mike Evans. Both those guys are, you know, I mean, Mike for sure is a Hall of Fame caliber player. I think Levante, you know, realistically, maybe if he played in a different market, we'd be talking about him as a potential Hall of Famer as well. But when you have those guys, you keep bringing back and show, like, this can be you. Like, we want those core guys. The Eagles did it for a long time. Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelsey, they kept bringing those guys back, and they ended up finishing their entire careers. Like, that's part of building the culture, and it's a credit to Jason and his staff. They've found some of those guys you can really build around while simultaneously exploring a variety of avenues to fill some of the most important positions, as they have twice now in free agency with the quarterbacks.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate the insight, and hope you enjoy your time here sweating it out with us in Tampa.
You got it, Casey.
All right, we'll be right back here on Training Camp Report presented by Advent Health.
Being around great players makes you want to separate.
Well, these dudes count on me, so now I got to hold myself to a certain standard too as well.
It takes all 11. It takes 11 guys out there doing their job.
The biggest goal as a professional should be to win a championship, period.
I recognize the situation that I'm in and the people who are surrounding me. I'm not just going to let that opportunity go by.
It's about carrying your responsibility and not letting your brothers down, right? That's football.
Football just brings us like a culture together.
In order to get to that level, you got to compete against the best. So I'm glad I'm here at the Buccaneers.
While you're living it, you don't realize you're making that history.
Welcome back into Training Camp Report presented by Advent Health. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. Got some great insight from Tom Pelissero, and great to have the NFL Network out here with us.
I wanted to ask you about that. I saw his tweets this morning about Baker. We saw that kind of transpire yesterday.
Yeah, whenever you see Bobby, our trainer, walk over to Baker, you're like, no.
Actually, I think Baker himself called him over.
Yeah, that's even worse.
But he went back into practice.
Yeah,
so did Tom kind of downplay it?
Yep, he said that it's just kind of your hand hits something, you know, a shoulder pad or something, and it's not going to feel great, but it's not a big deal, not a long-term thing. Everybody can, you know.
I don't want to hear about a Baker.
Yeah, nope, not allowed. So tell Baker keep his hands to himself. That's it, you know, and protect it. But yeah, no, Tom said not a big deal. Nobody's very concerned, and you know, everybody was very happy to hear that. So let's go ahead and close out now, as we've been talking about different position groups. Let's talk about the tight end room a little bit more. They're a group we haven't focused as much on. We've heard some things about Devin Culp making some big plays in practice. While, you know, as much as you never want to see any of our starters sit out of training camp, when it's not for something super concerning like the way it is for Cade Otton, that, you know, he's got a little bit of a hamstring situation, it's not something very concerning. It means you're going to get a lot of more reps for these other guys that you want to learn more about and you want to see grow a little bit. So in the time Cade's been out, watching Payne Durham, watching Devin Culp, what do we feel like we've learned about who's kind of the number two guy, and how much, you know, the blocking versus catching and the roles, and especially with Tristan Wirfs potentially being out, what that could look like? Yeah,
do we have the graphic showing all our tight ends from 2024? Because we can just recycle it.
Yeah, we didn't even need to make a new graphic. Yep, there it is.
It's the same guys, literally.
Down to the practice squad.
No subtractions, no additions.
Yep.
Same guys we had last year.
They said run it back.
You said it already, Cade Otton, and we talked about it earlier. He's dealing with a minor hamstring thing. He's not playing a lot, but kind of like, I know he's not as seasoned as Levante, but he is going into his 4th year, 5th year.
For Cade.
Cade.
Yeah.
4th year. But he's seen so many snaps. He's kind of famous for playing.
5th year because he came in 2020, right?
No, I don't think it was 2020.
Oh, 2021. You're right. Math was not mathing in my head.
Because that would make this his 4th year.
Yeah.
This is really good. This
Great
is a good
content
show
we're doing.
There he is.
Dog days of camp
Turn
right
around and
now.
hold
We're
up
struggling,
how many
guys.
fingers you've been in the league. I think it's 4.
Yeah.
But he's so well known for playing almost every snap, and he does everything right.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm comparing him a little bit to Levante David. That's a lofty comparison, but I think it's a guy that can afford to miss some practices, and you're not too worried about it. He's going to be your main guy because he's proven that he can be a receiving threat. You recall when Mike and Chris were both down at the same time last year, that we actually started using him as our primary slot guy. When that was never been his role before, and over the course of like 3 games, he had huge numbers. He was actually relevant in fantasy football between you and me. I know you don't care about that, but
Really?
so he's capable of doing that. But he also he's a good blocker, and he always does the right thing. And then Payne Durham, he's a bigger guy. He's shown some downfield pass catching ability, but they already like his blocking. He's a rugged blocker, and so like you said, with Tristan Wirfs, the question marks about him and when he's going to start playing. Will the Buccaneers use more 12 personnel in order to give whoever's Charlie Heck, presumably playing left tackle, some help, especially when you're playing teams like Philadelphia with all their pass rushers? So you wonder if maybe he'll see a lot more playing time. And then Devin Culp, really, I think one of the guys that stood out as a guy taking a big leap in his 2nd year so far. He's made a lot of downfield plays. Josh Grizzard said the other day that his speed is something that very few NFL tight ends have. He didn't just mean on our team, he meant around the league. So kind of game-breaking speed, great with the ball in his hands, can run deep balls, and we're trying to get more of that in our offense. So I think he's a guy that could, I think he played maybe 80 snaps last year right at the end. He's a guy that could see a lot more action this year. And you got Code Keefe, who's, that's the guy they move around the offense to block mostly.
Yeah.
But he can be like an H-back or a fullback, wherever you want to put him. And then Tanner Tala, he spent the last 2 years on the practice squad. Now, 2 full years on the practice squad, and the Bucs are bringing him back for a 3rd year, and notably did not add any other like undrafted free agents at the position. To me, that tells me there's something about Tanner they like a lot. And, that's about all we can say because he hasn't had any real regular season experience, but there's clearly something they see in this young guy that they want to see more of.
Yep. All right. Well, there's a shot at Baker, who's obviously out at practice and not going to be practicing because of just that little bit of hand soreness, but everybody can be calm. Deep breaths. It's not a big deal. So he's just going to get a chance to walk and coach.
He's coaching on the field right now.
Coaching on the field right now, which everybody's going to love, I'm sure. So that's going to do it for us on this edition of Training Camp Report presented by I've Been Health. We'll be back out here tomorrow morning, so we'll see you then.